Hi, I am Beren,
Hi, I'm Benny.
and today we're going to go into a Hyground session. If you want to do this type of session yourself, you can go to our sandbox environment. When you sign up, you just leave your email address. You don't need to leave your card or anything else. You sign up and you have access to our sandbox. You can see everything there. But we had a small issue on our sandbox, and that was that it is a little bit slower than the rest of our environment. And Benny is going to dive into high ground with you to show you why that is.
All right, thank you, Beren. Yeah, I chose to go towards our dev cluster, which is a multi-cluster setup for Hyground, and it has access to our sandbox, which is hosted on AWS, and our other clusters, which are hosted on Azure. And I had this subjective feeling that the Azure responses were faster than the AWS ones, but I wanted to have proof and maybe a reason and investigation as to why that is the case. And I asked Hyground to investigate this in depth. And it immediately kicked off with a to-do list to check out traces, figure out which clusters to compare, and check out the model comparison between all of those. And it ran a couple of CLI tools that to discover the proper clusters. It figured out where to check for metrics and for traces and how to get the model configuration. As you can see here, many more commands have been executed, partly in parallel, partly consecutively, to get a full picture. And this full picture took Hyground from 11:06 to 11, so around 5 minutes, to come up with a verdict, which said it's caused by a model and provider configuration. There is a difference. The difference is that the AWS Bedrock models are cross-region profiles. So they are global cross-region profiles, which means the models are being selected on demand and not necessarily co-located to the actual Hyground deployment, such as our Azure environments. And this is totally reasonable and makes a lot of sense to me. And I was immediately amazed by this outcome. Hyground provided a lot more detail here on how it got there and additional info that there is no fallback configured, for example. It underlined all those things with pretty charts and diagrams that are helpful. It also gave me the info that there is a monitoring gap because traces are unavailable, which was peculiar at this point in time. Probably we had some downtime of the traces or they were disabled temporarily. So I asked it, please quantify this. I want to know how much slower it is actually. And use metrics for that. So again, it kicked it off with a lot of tool calls and came up with another info and figured that AWS is like around about 50% slower than Azure. Yeah, showed that again in a nice graph to me. I'm super impressed by this thorough analysis. Like boiling it down to this one thing is not tricky and would have taken me much longer than maybe 5 or 10 minutes like here.
And we kept it this way, right? So the sandbox, our high ground environment, but that is a clear choice. It's a trade-off between more stability and more availability versus some speed gains. This is just one type of session that we have. Earlier, we had a look at the auto RCA sessions, which are triggered whenever an incident happens. And then in the next video, we'll look at scheduling and skills, where we can schedule sessions to be launched at a regular interval. So definitely check that out, and thank you for watching.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.